Hey everyone, All in Arrowhead here. Week 6 was packed with action and some games that really shook up how we're viewing the league heading into Week 7. The Chargers narrowly escaped with a win over the Dolphins, showcasing their balanced attack, while Miami struggled to capitalize on key opportunities despite flashes from Devon Achane. The Steelers toppled the Browns in a game defined by defensive resilience and timely plays, with Pittsburgh's pass rush and secondary making life difficult for Dillon Gabriel. Green Bay bounced back with a convincing performance over Cincinnati, using a well-rounded offensive plan to keep the Bengals' defense on its heels and capitalize on turnovers. Meanwhile, the Broncos eked out a hard-fought victory against the Jets in London, relying on a combination of field position management, steady quarterback play, and opportunistic defense. The Panthers pulled off a thrilling last-minute win over the Cowboys as Bryce Young and Rico Dowdle orchestrated a high-pressure drive that set up the game-winning kick, while the Rams handled the Ravens with a controlled mix of run and pass, showcasing both offensive creativity and defensive discipline. Finally, the Seahawks managed to hold off a resilient Jacksonville squad with a late drive sealing their win and keeping their season trajectory on track. My predictions have been a mix of hits and misses, which has kept me on my toes, constantly analyzing which teams are trending up and which are still facing growing pains. With the Ravens and Bills enjoying a bye this week, the rest of the league has an opportunity to make moves in the standings and shake up the playoff picture before the second half of the season hits. Momentum is swinging in interesting directions, and as we head into Week 7, it's clear that every game matters and every matchup could have playoff implications. Let's get into the games! The Steelers roll into this AFC North clash, fresh off a commanding 23-9 win over the Browns, a game that showcased just how sharp this team can be when everything clicks. Aaron Rodgers looked completely in rhythm, carving up Cleveland's secondary with 235 yards and 2 touchdowns, efficiently spreading the ball around and showing veteran patience under pressure. Pittsburgh's defense, however, stole the show. 6 sacks, 2 of them from star cornerback Jalen Ramsey, and relentless backfield disruption that kept Dillon Gabriel and the Browns' offense gasping for air. The front 7 looked menacing, forcing hurried throws and closing running lanes before they could develop. On the other side, the Bengals continued to slide after a frustrating 27-18 loss to Green Bay, where Joe Flacco's debut was a mixed bag. He put up 219 yards and 2 touchdowns, but struggled with timing and accuracy against pressure. Ja'Marr Chase continued to be a lone bright spot with 94 receiving yards, but without consistent help or a running game, Cincinnati's offense sputtered when it mattered. The defense also struggled to contain the Packers' balanced attack, giving up big gains in key moments. With Pittsburgh's defense playing suffocating football and Rodgers building chemistry with his receivers, I'm confident the Steelers keep rolling here. I've got them taking this one to move to 5-1, while the Bengals slide further down to 2-5. The Rams come into this London matchup riding a physical confidence-building win over Baltimore, where the defense set the tone and the offense did just enough. Matthew Stafford managed the game efficiently, completing 17 of 26 passes for about 180 yards and a touchdown to Tyler Higbee, while Kyren Williams stepped up with tough productive touches, carrying the ball 13 times for 50 yards and a short rushing score that helped flip field position after a turnover. Los Angeles' front regularly disrupted drives, the secondary tightened in the red zone, and the Rams converted a few critical third downs to control the clock. Jacksonville, by contrast, struggled to find consistent traction in their recent loss to Seattle. Trevor Lawrence threw for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns, but was hammered by the rush, absorbing 6 to 7 sacks, and the Jaguars' run game was bottled up for barely any yards on the ground, which forced Lawrence into more pressured, tight window throws. A big play that could have changed momentum was wiped out by a penalty, and Jacksonville repeatedly stalled in the red zone and on third down. That combination, a Rams group that's suddenly disciplined in all 3 phases, and a Jaguars offense that looks vulnerable when its protections break down, give Los Angeles the edge. I'm taking the Rams to win this one, moving to 5-2, while Jacksonville falls to 4-3. The Eagles come into Week 7 needing to regroup after a 34-17 loss to the Giants that exposed both offensive inefficiency and defensive inconsistency. Jalen Hurts threw for 214 yards and a touchdown, but his offense sputtered in key moments. A.J. Dillon's costly red zone fumble and multiple 3-and-outs killed early momentum. The turning point came when Cordell Flott jumped a slant route and returned an interception 68 yards, flipping the game's energy entirely. Philadelphia's offensive line also struggled to protect Hurts, allowing too much pressure and forcing him into checkdowns, rather than big plays to Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert. The defense, meanwhile, couldn't contain Jackson Dart's mobility or the Giants' balance on offense, something that will need to be corrected fast. Minnesota, on the other hand, had a bye in Week 6 after a physical win over Cleveland and London, where Carson Wentz threw for 236 yards and a touchdown to Jordan Addison, and Justin Jefferson torched the Browns' secondary for 123 yards. The Vikings' defense tightened up in the second half of the game, limiting Cleveland's ground attack and forcing key third-down stops. Coming off the bye, they should be rested and ready, but Philadelphia's depth and urgency to bounce back could prove the difference. I'm taking the Eagles to respond and improve to 5-2, while Minnesota drops to 3-3. Patriots enter this matchup riding a wave of confidence after a 25-19 win over the Saints, a game where Drake May once again looked like the real deal. He completed 18 of 26 passes for 261 yards and 3 touchdowns, showing sharp decision-making and command of the offense. Demario Douglas provided the early spark with a 53-yard touchdown that set the tone, while Kayshon Boutte hauled in 2 key red zone scores to give New England breathing room. Ramondre Stevenson added 89 scrimmage yards and helped ice the game late with tough runs that kept the chains moving. Defensively, the Patriots tightened up when it mattered most. Robert Spillane and Christian Gonzalez made crucial tackles, and Christian Ellis' forced fumble in the fourth quarter sealed the victory as New Orleans tried to mount a late comeback. On the other hand, Tennessee's offensive woes continued in their 20-10 loss to the Raiders. Quarterback Cam Ward threw for 222 yards and a touchdown, but faced constant pressure, taking 6 sacks and losing a fumble on a red zone trip. The Titans' rushing attack was largely ineffective, with Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears limited to just 65 yards combined, while the defense couldn't slow down Geno Smith, who consistently found open targets to sustain drives. Tennessee's inability to protect Ward and create turnovers on defense remains a major issue heading into this matchup, with New England showing steady improvement on both sides of the ball and the Titans trending in the opposite direction. I'm taking the Patriots to win this game and move to 5-2, while Tennessee falls to 1-6. The Panthers come into this matchup after a thrilling 30-27 victory over the Cowboys, where Bryce Young displayed remarkable accuracy and poise, completing 17 of 25 passes for 199 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a crucial 36-yard strike to Rico Dowdle in the third quarter that helped shift momentum in Carolina's favor. Dowdle was a true workhorse, rushing for 183 yards and adding 56 receiving yards, giving him a total of 239 yards from scrimmage and keeping defenses on their heels all game. Rookie wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan also made a significant impact, hauling in 2 touchdown passes, including a pivotal fourth-quarter score that set up the game-winning field goal, showing his ability to make big plays in critical moments. Carolina's defense allowed Dak Prescott to throw for 261 yards and 3 touchdowns, but they tightened up in the final moments, holding Dallas just short of a comeback and showing resilience under pressure. On the other side, the Jets remain winless after a 13-11 loss to the Broncos in London, struggling to find any offensive rhythm. Justin Fields had a tough outing, completing just 9 of 17 passes for 45 yards, while being under constant pressure and taking 9 sacks, which stalled drives and limited big play opportunities. The Jets' offensive line and passing game could not sustain momentum, and while the defense performed admirably to limit Denver to 13 points, it wasn't enough to compensate for the offensive inefficiency. With the Panthers' balanced attack, dynamic playmakers, and proven ability to execute in clutch situations, they hold a clear edge over a Jets team still searching for consistency. I'm picking Carolina to win this one, moving to 4-3, while the Jets fall to 0-7. The Dolphins enter this Week 7 matchup after a heartbreaking 29-27 loss to the Chargers, dropping to 1-5 on the season, in a game that showcased both their potential and ongoing inconsistencies. With Tyreek Hill out for the year, much of the passing load shifted to the secondary and emerging targets, and quarterback Tua Tagovailoa passed for 205 yards and a touchdown, but also threw 3 costly interceptions, including one on the final drive that sealed the loss. Running back De'Von Achane continued to be the offensive engine, rushing for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns, showing his ability to generate explosive plays and keep drives alive despite Miami's limited receiving options. The offensive line struggled at times to protect Tua, forcing hurried throws and limiting the effectiveness of the short passing game. On the defensive side, the Dolphins generated pressure but gave up several key completions, allowing Los Angeles to maintain momentum and capitalize on turnovers. Meanwhile, the Browns also sit at 1-5 after a 23-9 loss to the Steelers, a game where quarterback Dillon Gabriel faced heavy pressure. The running game was ineffective, and the offense could only manage field goals with no touchdowns, while the defense failed to stop Pittsburgh on key drives and penalties extended opposing possessions. With both teams desperate for a win, the Dolphins' ability to generate big plays on the ground with Achane and exploit turnovers gives them the edge over a Browns team still struggling to find offensive consistency and defensive stability. I'm picking Miami to win this one and improve to 2-5, while the Browns remain at 1-6. The Saints entered this matchup looking to bounce back after a frustrating 25-19 loss to the Patriots, a game defined by solid ball control but poor red zone execution. Spencer Rattler completed 20 of 26 passes for 227 yards, showing poise and accuracy, but New Orleans couldn't capitalize when it mattered most, settling for 4 Blake Grupe field goals instead of touchdowns. The Saints' offensive rhythm sputtered late, and their defense gave up several chunk plays through the air, exposing coverage issues that have plagued them all season. On the other side, the Bears are fresh off a thrilling 25-24 victory over Washington, capped by Jake Moody's game-winning field goal after Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's late fumble gave Chicago a second chance. Caleb Williams displayed impressive leadership, throwing for 232 yards and 2 touchdowns while extending plays under pressure, showing the growth and command the Bears envisioned when they drafted him. DeAndre Swift was equally vital to the offense, racking up 121 total yards and consistently moving the chains with explosive cuts and smart vision out of the backfield. Chicago's defense bent but didn't break, making key stops when it mattered most, while Williams' ability to finish strong helped seal the comeback. With the Saints struggling to convert drives and the Bears beginning to find balance on both sides of the ball, I'm picking Chicago to take this one, improving to 4-2, while the Saints slide to 1-6. The Raiders enter this divisional matchup looking to build momentum after a 20-10 win over the Titans, where their defense dominated up front with 6 sacks and a crucial second-half takeaway that sealed the game. Max Crosby led the charge with 2 sacks, while the defensive line consistently pressured Cam Ward and limited Tennessee's run game to under 70 total yards. Offensively, Geno Smith threw for 174 yards with a touchdown as well as an interception, and running back Ashton Jeanty added balance on the ground with several key runs that kept drives alive. Still, the Raiders' red zone efficiency remains a concern as they settled for field goals on multiple promising possessions. On the other side, Kansas City comes in after a commanding 30-17 victory over the Lions, powered by Patrick Mahomes' 257 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Xavier Worthy continued to shine with big plays in space, while Hollywood Brown provided a steady presence in the intermediate passing game. Defensively, the Chiefs' front held Detroit's offense in check during the second half, forcing 2 key punts to shut the door on any comeback attempt. With Mahomes finding rhythm and Kansas City's defense rounding into form, the Chiefs have the upper hand against a Raiders squad that still struggles to finish drives. I'm picking Kansas City to win this one and move to 4-3, while Las Vegas drops to 2-5. The Colts head into their Week 7 matchup against the Chargers after a hard-fought 31-27 victory over the Cardinals, where Daniel Jones orchestrated a sharp passing attack with 107 yards and 3 touchdown passes, connecting well with his receivers while also keeping defenses honest with Jonathan Taylor, who rushed for 118 yards and a score, demonstrating the Colts' ability to balance the run and pass effectively. Defensively, they were able to limit explosive plays and force some timely stops, even while missing key contributors like Kenny Moore, highlighting the depth on their roster. On the other side, the Chargers narrowly defeated the Dolphins 29-27, in a game that showcased Justin Herbert's arm strength and decision-making as he threw for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a well-timed drive late in the game that allowed Cameron Dicker to convert a clutch 33-yard game-winning field goal, while Kimani Vidal added 124 total yards with a rushing touchdown, keeping the offense dynamic. However, the Chargers' secondary showed cracks, particularly with injuries impacting cornerback Elijah Molden and other key defensive backs, leaving them vulnerable against balanced attacks. Going into this matchup, the Colts' combination of a controlled offensive scheme, effective rushing attack, and opportunistic defense gives them a slight edge over the Chargers' high-powered but occasionally inconsistent offense. And I'm leaning Indianapolis to come out on top and improve to 6-1, while the Chargers fall to 4-3. The Broncos head into Week 7, having just escaped a gritty 13-11 win over the Jets in London, where their defense absolutely carried them. Linebacker Jonathan Cooper led the charge. Denver recorded 9 sacks, and Bo Nix was pressured all day but still managed a clean stat line, completing 19 of 30 passes for 174 yards and a touchdown while avoiding turnovers. Their ground game was limited and their offense stalled often, but their ability to win close games under duress is growing. The Giants, meanwhile, demolished the Eagles 34-17 in their most dominant showing of the season. Jackson Dart completed 17 of 25 passes for 195 yards and a touchdown, scrambled for 58 yards and another score, and leaned heavily on rookie back Cam Skattebo, who ran for 3 touchdowns. New York's offensive line dominated in the trenches, opening lanes consistently and allowing both run and pass to flourish, while the defense flipped the game on a 60-yard interception return by Cordell Flott. These contrasting performances frame a fascinating matchup. Denver's defense is battle-tested and sturdy, but the Broncos must find more consistency on offense. Meanwhile, New York's rookie duo of Dart and Skattebo have confidence and a swagger now, and the Giants believe they're turning a corner. Still, I lean toward the Broncos winning in a tight one, moving to 5-2, while the Giants fall to 2-5. The Green Bay Packers come into this matchup after a strong 27-18 win over the Bengals, a game where Josh Jacobs powered the ground attack with multiple touchdown runs, including one that broke open a tight first half, while Jordan Love showed his deep ball prowess, hitting several receivers on timing routes that kept Green Bay's offense balanced and unpredictable. The Packers' offensive line was dominant, opening consistent running lanes and giving Love clean pockets, which allowed the team to sustain long drives and control the clock. On the defensive side, Green Bay applied relentless pressure, forcing hurried throws and limiting explosive plays, while key stops on third downs prevented Cincinnati from ever truly mounting momentum. The Arizona Cardinals, meanwhile, fell just short against the Colts in a 31-27 loss, though Jacoby Brissett displayed accuracy and composure, connecting on multiple medium and deep throws to keep drives alive. The Cardinals leaned on their receiving core, including key contributions from their tight end Trey McBride and wideout Zay Jones, who consistently gained yards after the catch, but drops and missed opportunities in the red zone hindered their ability to close out the game. Arizona's defense also showed flashes with a few timely tackles for loss and pass breakups, but struggled to contain sustained drives, especially in the second half. Both teams featured dynamic playmakers capable of changing a game in a single play, and turnovers or big momentum swings could decide the outcome. But Green Bay's combination of a disciplined defense, versatile offensive attack, and ability to capitalize on mistakes gives them a clear edge. I'm picking the Packers to win this one, moving to 4-1-1, while the Cardinals fall to 2-5. The Commanders come into this game reeling from a heartbreaking 25-24 loss to the Bears, a game where turnovers swung the outcome. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt coughed up 2 fumbles, and Jaden Daniels was picked during a red zone drive. Daniels flashed his dual threat upside, throwing for a couple of scores and rushing for over 30 yards. But with Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown out for the night, Washington leaned heavily on receiver Luke McCaffrey, who hauled in clutch receptions to keep drives alive despite the depth being tested. Defensively, their front got home repeatedly, logging multiple sacks and disrupting rhythm, although a brutal 55-yard catch and run from DeAndre Swift ultimately set up Chicago's game winner. On Dallas' side, the Cowboys are coming off a 30-27 loss to Carolina, in which Dak Prescott turned in a stat line that's hard to fault. He threw for 261 yards and 3 touchdowns while protecting the football, but their run game barely existed, totaling just 31 rushing yards, and their defense allowed Rico Dowdle to torch them for 183 yards rushing and force big plays in the passing game. George Pickens exploded with 168 receiving yards on the day, giving Dallas a spark. But breakdowns in the secondary and lack of support in the trenches allowed the Panthers to build the momentum necessary for a last-second field goal. This sets up a fascinating duel. Washington's strength in the run game and interior push versus Dallas's explosive receivers and aerial firepower. I'm picking Washington to survive this battle, getting to 4-3, while the Cowboys slide to 2-4-1. The Falcons enter this matchup riding high after a commanding 24-14 victory over the Bills, where Bijan Robinson once again proved why he's one of the league's most dynamic playmakers. Robinson tore through Buffalo's defense for 170 rushing yards, including an electrifying 81-yard touchdown that shifted the game's momentum. Michael Penix Jr. delivered one of his most composed performances of the year, throwing for 250 yards and a touchdown while maintaining control against a strong pass rush. Drake London was unstoppable in the passing game, totaling 158 yards as he consistently found space in the secondary. On the defensive side, Atlanta forced 2 critical interceptions from Josh Allen and allowed 0 second-half points, showing their continued growth under head coach Raheem Morris. The 49ers, on the other hand, are looking to bounce back after a 30-19 defeat to the Buccaneers, where Mac Jones struggled to establish consistency, throwing 2 interceptions and failing to capitalize on red zone chances. The offensive line faltered against Tampa Bay's relentless front, limiting Christian McCaffrey's effectiveness on the ground and forcing the offense into uncomfortable passing situations. Defensively, San Francisco missed the presence of Fred Warner in the middle, leading to breakdowns in coverage and a lack of containment on outside runs. Still, with their balanced offense, deep roster talent, and a renewed sense of urgency after a frustrating loss, I'm picking the 49ers to get back on track and improve to 5-2, while the Falcons fall to 3-3. The Buccaneers are riding high after a statement 30-19 win over the 49ers, improving to 5-1 despite missing top weapons Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan. Baker Mayfield turned in one of his sharpest outings of the season, completing 17 of 23 passes for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns, while effectively spreading the ball to his young supporting cast. Second-year receiver Cameron Johnson made a strong impact with his first touchdown of the year, while Tez Johnson added another score as Tampa's offense found ways to stay efficient, even without its veteran playmakers. The Buccaneers' defense once again set the tone, holding San Francisco to just 67 rushing yards, with Antoine Winfield Jr. and Vita Vea leading a disciplined, aggressive unit. On the other side, the Lions fell 30-17 to the Chiefs in a game where they struggled to maintain offensive rhythm after halftime. Jared Goff threw for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns, but Detroit's offense lacked its usual explosiveness, and the defense couldn't keep up with Kansas City's dynamic pace. Despite their physical style, the Lions continued to show inconsistency against top-tier teams, while the Buccaneers are proving resilient and well-coached. With Tampa Bay's balance on both sides of the ball and growing confidence, I'm picking the Buccaneers to move to 6-1, while Detroit drops to 4-3 heading into Week 8. The Houston Texans enter this Week 7 matchup against the Seattle Seahawks coming off a Week 6 bye, giving them an extra week to recover and refine their game plan after their emphatic 44-10 victory over the Ravens in Week 5. In that game, quarterback C.J. Stroud showcased his accuracy and poise, completing 23 of 27 passes for 244 yards and 4 touchdowns, while spreading the ball effectively to multiple targets. And running back Nick Chubb powered the ground game with 61 yards and a touchdown, helping the Texans control the clock and sustain long drives. Houston's defense was equally impressive, forcing 3 turnovers, limiting the Ravens to just 207 total yards, and showing the ability to apply pressure and capitalize on mistakes. The Seahawks, on the other hand, rode the momentum of a 20-12 win over the Jaguars, where Sam Darnold threw for 295 yards and 2 touchdowns, finding Jackson Smith-Njigba for 162 receiving yards and a touchdown, while Seattle's defensive front recorded 7 sacks and kept Jacksonville's rushing game in check with just 59 yards on the ground. With Houston coming off a dominant win and an extra week to prepare, they enter this matchup with confidence on both sides of the ball, while Seattle brings a disciplined, aggressive defense and a balanced offensive attack capable of exploiting any lapses. The battle lines are drawn between Houston's revitalized offensive execution and Seattle's well-rounded opportunistic play. I'm leaning towards the Seahawks to pull out a hard-fought victory in this one, moving Seattle to 5-2 while Houston falls to 2-4.